doorbell started to squawk like a fat frog right into my brain, and I almost bit my tongue in surprise. I don't like to be distracted from work, but Chirpat had connected the bell to our internal network, and now this toad yells in everyone's ears every time he gets his garlic-soaked food from the delivery, and there's no way to disconnect. The alarms in the intranet are forced. Security reasons. I called up the clock icon. Holy motherboard, it's 7 in the morning. No way, it's Chirpat's munchies. He should be snoring in his den by now, and the others probably too. I bet I'm the only one left roasting. I switched to the external camera and saw a yellow delivery drone hovering in front of the door, humming quietly. An oblong plastic cylinder hung in the grav catch under its belly, like a dead mouse in an owl's claws. Okie dokie, now I got it. A customer had mailed Angel an order again. Sometimes, he gets samples of nanosystems for the code roasting in such cylinders. But why so early in the morning? On second thought, daytime doesn't matter much here in the cooker pit. In fact, it's not so crucial in Crown City either. Everyone lives here as he pleases. It's a slum condo, not an industrial zone where everyone is ticking on a schedule from shift to shift. No, we live here like the ones behind the Golden Wall. We get up and go to sleep as we feel like it. It's built more around the orders. Code roasters can have customers from anywhere worldwide. As for work, we have a lot of it because Cooker Pit is the coolest roaster team in Crown City and maybe on the entire Rusty Coast. No one else takes on roasting codes like this and guarantees customers results with a money-back policy. But I don't remember us ever having to refund anything to anyone in the last couple of years. The drone kept buzzing in front of the door. A haze of air distorted by the anti-gravity field rippled around it. I scanned his courier number with my camera. The delivery was anonymous. You bet. Angel already knew who the customer was and who needed the order to be traceable to the code roasters. I gave the confirmation command and opened the hatch of the receiving box on the porch. The drone carefully lowered the tank into it and sped away, kicking up dust and small debris. I ran a safety protocol just in case. One roaster from the western suburbs almost got fried by the bomb sent by a disgruntled customer. We have a good reception box installed by an army contractor. We roasted something for him off the grid, and he paid us back by installing security systems, the same he used to install for the military and all sorts of special services. After sniffing and measuring the cylinder, the protocol gave the green light and turned on the delivery belt. The bell in the hallway tinkled. At least Chirpat hadn't gotten there with his frogs. I was too lazy to get up, and I still had an unfinished order in my deck that I wanted to deliver to a customer tonight. I decided that Angel would pick up his shit later, so I went back to work. Nothing interesting happened until evening, so instead of unnecessary descriptions, I'll introduce you a little bit to the Cooker Pit and its inhabitants. Back in times when Crown City was still a small town of mostly IT guys and programmers, that's what code roasters working for big corporations used to be called, Cooker Pit was the base of some cool startup doing nanosystems. The nano was still lousy then, of course, primitive like hell, but there was a lot of money in it, and the startup had built up a base for themselves. 1 floor above ground, 2 underground, full of hot hardware, hot for those times, of course, with a power line buried almost half a mile deep and connected directly to the federal T-station so that they wouldn't be left holding candles in case of emergency. Of course, when an emergency came, the power line went down. To be more precise, the T-station was destroyed by eco-terrorists. The hardware quickly became as obsolete as the stone axes, and the city turned from a respectable technopark into a slum condo. But Angel had already realized that it would make a good base, made a deal with the leaders of the local gangs, and settled, in the future, Cooker Pit. At first, He roasted alone, then gradually picked up a team. The gangs don't touch us because we work for all sorts of clients, and a good roaster who would take any order and guarantee the result is a valuable asset. Now there are 5 of us in Cooker Pit: Angel, Chirpat, Vilma, Solveig, and Misha. That's me. Angel gathered us together from scratch, some from the orphanage, some from prison, some from the gang, but it's a long story and irrelevant to the case. We've been roasting together for about 5 years, and Angel runs everything, so I'll say a few words about him. Angel's old. He's about 60 years old, no less. Wilma, she's kind of a distant relative, grandniece or something, said he used to work for some big corporation, roasting codes for the first nanosystems. Only back then was it called developing the software. They were working on artificial intelligence and transferring human consciousness into virtual space, and there seemed to have been some success. But then the big crapload came down, and Angel ended up in the Cooker Pit. As I've already said, he turned out to be a wise guy, and the gangs didn't chew him up but protected him from outsiders instead. We were lucky to have Angel. I mean, that's what I thought at the time. Meanwhile, it was well over noon, and I started to guess why I was not seeing yawning and stretching figures wandering around the Cooker Pit. There was no activity on the intranet either. Weird, but nothing special. I switched off and got up to have a quick snack. The kitchen was silent. All sorts of stuff and half-eaten food were scattered around as it was left from the evening. Strange, I thought. Okay, Angel often gets late somewhere in the city. But what about the others? I knocked on Chirpat's door, and it was quiet. The girls' rooms, too. I stood in the hallway, looking at the locked doors and thinking, what the hell? And then I heard this strange sound from the hallway, some sort of light rustling or a buzzing, like a cloud of tiny gnats swirling or the wind blowing sand off a sandy hill. I'd heard this sandy whiz 6 months ago when Angel had taken us on vacation to the West Coast to abandoned resorts overrun by dunes. It was really stupid for me not to get what it was, but even if I had, it wouldn't have helped. I went to the hallway, where it seemed to be coming from, and it was so loud that as soon as I stepped over the threshold, I froze in place, like the bronze statue of some former president or another old-time moron that stands on the old square next to the Cooker Pit. The morning delivery container was lying on the receiving pallet of the delivery belt, and the order, a cloud of silvery, weightless dust, was crawling out of it. It got me real creeps because Vilma was kneeling next to the pallet, and the dust was streaming down to her face in a thin ribbon and was slowly being drawn into her open mouth, nostrils, ears, and even eyes, which turned into the small clouds of silver dust. I knew I should have jumped the hell out of there and hit the switch of our defense system. Even though we haven't encountered combat nanobots so far, we've certainly heard of them and taken our own measures. They all have a big disadvantage: sensitivity to electromagnetic pulses, as the particles are too small to fit the protection into them. But I just stood there like an idiot, unable to move, staring at the aggressive dust eating my girlfriend, with only one thought running through my head. How did the gift get through the security protocol, as Angel had just updated it yesterday? I knew I didn't have a chance anyway because the EMP generator had already been disabled, and the reason for that was the same as why the security protocol didn't work. You want to know how I figured this out? And, more importantly, how can I tell you all this when nothing worked and the entire Cooker Pit was at the mercy of the combat nanobots? You probably think that I was able to do some last-minute hacker wicked shit and slay that nasty gray slime before it devoured me, just like it did with Wilma. And you'll be all wrong, because I couldn't do shit. I couldn't even try. All I could do was open my mouth, watching Wilma's body slowly sprawl away, turning into a brownish-red something, and the silver clouds soaring back into the air and heading straight for me. The brownish red piles along the walls were the last thing I saw before the stuff pelted my eyes. All that was left of the cooker pit's roasters. I was surprised it didn't hurt that much. Actually, I didn't feel anything at all. I just suddenly went blind and deaf, stopped smelling, and soon stopped feeling my arms and legs. I don't know whether it was because my body was gone, or because the gray filth had turned it all off before the body was gone. Who cares anyway? Here I was, Misha, the crafty roaster, and the next moment, I was gone. I seemed to be somewhere, but in the Neverland, where only my consciousness was whining. Am I dead? If yes, then why the hell can I still think? What's going on? It came from nowhere, like a small needle. Hello, Misha. Not a voice, just a thought in a void. But somehow I knew it was a woman's, and it was clear that it's Solveig. I'm the one. Why? Where? Who? You see, I wasn't thinking straight at that moment. We're all here now, Solveig replied, and immediately a chorus of those thought voices confirmed that yes, we're all here now. And by golly, I recognized everyone. Oh, wait. Someone was missing. What about Angel? So you haven't figured it out yet? I heard Chirpot say. No frogs, thank God. He is the bastard who put us all here. That's when the puzzle came together for me. Of course, we figured out some of it later while stuck in the barrel. That's where that sucker Angel put us, into the barrel. That's what we called our server room. It's a nice internal server room with no network access. The nanobots that attacked us turned out to be an old product of the company where Angel worked before the global crash. It turns out he managed to steal them and continued to roast them quietly while we were making a living for him. He was very interested, you see, in whether it was possible to upload human consciousness into a computer. Have you heard the story about the guy whose brains boiled and his memory was supposedly scattered all over the network? Well, it's not just a spooky story. It was Angel's first test subject. Anyway, he got those experiments on uploading people down to the point of usefulness, and he tried it on us. You know what's the most annoying? While hanging around in the server's memory, we realized we had partially roasted the code for what put us here. When you become a code yourself, it's not hard to learn what parts of yourself you once wrote. If only any of us had any idea where this was going. But Angel had thought it all out. He tossed in a piece here, a piece there. We don't usually go checking into each other's roasting. It's not that it is some kind of rule. Usually it's just a waste of time and quite a boring thing to do. Honestly, 90% of what we are roasting is just regular crap for dummies. How come you can read about all this, you ask? Well, it's pretty simple. Angel, of course, cut us off. The servers aren't connected to anything, just a closed system with no way out. But he does give us a little work to keep us on our toes, downloading from physical media directly into the system. Without bodies, we are much more efficient in roasting the codes. We work faster and don't need to waste time eating and sleeping. We can't revolt. He'll just erase us and upload some other poor bastards. But we add a couple 100 bytes to each code we roast, which will be gathered later if our roasted code ever gets into the open network. We don't risk going bigger, because we're afraid Angel will notice. We cannot upload ourselves into the net this way, though. Human consciousness is one huge data set. Not even 0.5% of it can fit on any external device. So, if you are reading these lines, it means that something has leaked out and cross-referenced with itself. Who knows, maybe someone will finally get to the cooker pit. The problem is, we haven't heard anything from Angel for 2 weeks, and it's getting a little creepy. Angel has cut off his nano-predatory thingy from our servers, but not from the world. So, we're wondering, is anyone else left out there to come and get us out of those damn servers? Or will this firmware have no more versions?